Well, here we are, 2 weeks less a day until Canadians go to the polls to vote in the 44th general election. Ontario is, of course, the big prize. It's almost impossible to win government if you don't win the majority of the seats in this province. But we are a big place, and the issues may be resonating differently in different regions. Let's find out. We welcome, as is our custom, from furthest away to closest to our studio, starting in the nation's capital with Erin Kelly. She's the CEO of Advanced Symbolics, Inc. And Susan Delacourt, national columnist for the Toronto Star. In Windsor, Ontario, Emmanuelle Richez, associate professor of political science at the University of Windsor. And in North Bay, Ontario, David Tabachnik, professor of political science at Nipissing University. And it's great to have all four of you with us for our first program here in our Sweet 16th season here on TVO. Before we dive down to hit on some of the issues, we got to hear from Polly first. So, Erin, just start us off by giving us the state of play. What are the polls saying in the province of Ontario today?
In the province of Ontario, well, across the country as a whole, it's a dead heat between the Liberals and the Conservatives. The Conservatives are slightly ahead. Ontario is very much reflective of that. But it's really anybody's election right now. I think what we're definitely headed for, though, is a minority government. Can you extrapolate a seat count from what you have inferred from those numbers? Yes, we're seeing across the country about 142 seats for the Conservatives and 134, I think it is, for the Liberals, with a number of swing ridings that could change that at any time. So do I infer from that that the Conservatives will also win more seats in the province of Ontario? The province of Ontario, Ontario's up for grabs, is what I would say. Okay, good enough. Well, let's acknowledge we're on TVO right now, O for Ontario, and therefore we tend to focus on this province more than we do the rest of the country. But it is an empirically provable fact that if you don't win the majority of the seats in this province, you're probably not going to win the government. And I've just been nerdy enough over the weekend to do a little number crunching on this and go back 40 years for the last 13 general elections to check that out. And Sheldon Osmond, our director, if I can get you to bring up that graphic there. Okay, here it is, and I'm going to go into just a little bit of detail here for those who are listening on podcasts and who can't see it. But let's go back. 2019, the Liberals won the most seats in Ontario, and they won government. 2015, Liberals most seats in Ontario, and they won government. Before that, 2011, Conservatives most seats in Ontario and win government. And it's the same all the way back to 1979. Whoever wins the most seats in Ontario wins government, with one exception, and that's 2006, Stephen Harper's first election victory, but it was a minority government. The Liberals won more seats in Ontario, but the Conservatives won the right to govern. Okay, I put all that up there, Susan Delacourt, just to ask you, given that historical reality, should all the parties, frankly, be spending all their time in this province from now until the end of the campaign?
Well, it depends, to go to Erin's point, how much they can shake loose in those places. Even before this election came around, the Liberals, Justin Trudeau's Liberals, were insisting or telling us that their big growth in this election was going to come in Quebec. So we saw the Prime Minister, the Liberal leader, we now call him, doing a lot of events in Quebec. But I would say you are going to see all the leaders, the major leaders anyway, spending all their time a great deal of time in Ontario in those last few days. Okay. I mean, I'm not saying that because we work here and, our checks are from here. I'm saying that because if you look at the facts, this is where elections are won, and therefore you'd think it makes a lot of sense to spend a lot of time here. If that's the case, Emma, come on in here. Tell us what, in your view, are the big issues that have been resonating in southwestern Ontario that have got people talking, the leaders campaigning on, and so on.
Well, in southwestern Ontario, you have one of the highest unemployment rates in Canada, so jobs are definitely on voters' mind. And for Windsor in particular, the automotive sector is key for jobs. So you have both the Liberal Party and the NDP who are making specific promises with regards to the automotive industry. But also, you can't underestimate the importance of affordable housing. Just in Windsor, in the last year, we've seen that the prices of homes have risen by 25%. So it's becoming really hard for Canadians in the area to rent or buy a house.
Okay, David, Northeastern Ontario, same question to you. What's resonating there? What are the leaders campaigning on?
Yeah, we've seen a few visits from the Liberal leader and the NDP. And one of the things we're concerned about here in Northern Ontario and Northeastern Ontario is out-migration, keeping people who live here to stay here, to work here. And so we're looking at the platforms, seeing things like these pilot projects to bring immigrants to the region, as well as tax credits to allow graduates to work in the region. So there's a mix of different policies and policy planks in the various platforms that I think are of interest to this region. The other thing is infrastructure. I think, generally speaking, we could say Northern Ontario is a little underserviced when it comes to infrastructure. We want better access to air travel and to rail. And during the time of COVID, of course, almost all of our air travel was cut off for a long period of time. And that's just not internationally, all over the place. We had to basically drive down to Toronto if we wanted to go anywhere on a plane.
All right. Erin, I'm going to get you to come in and follow up on that and I'll set it up this way. Your organization does sort of deep dive, 3-month-long longitudinal polling to see whether or not, an issue that's here today is gone tomorrow, or whether it's got legs and people are really still talking about it and engaging on it. What have you discovered so far about what issues are really sticking out there?
Yeah, great question. So we're seeing, of course, what everybody's mentioned here, the economy, jobs, housing, but add to that basic income, which we haven't heard any of the candidates talk about. We see people talking about that online. Climate crisis is up there right after the economy. Abortion, interestingly enough, which has been brought back into this election. These are also issues that people across the province are talking about in the highest numbers. Abortion in what respect? Well, in both respects, we're seeing it across the political spectrum, both on the far right and the left. So pro-choice and pro-life, very engaged, but mostly on the pro-choice because of what happened in Texas. That has ignited people's fears that those types of laws could be brought in here. All right, Susan, I'm just going to ask you a very neutral, open-ended question. What has this election been about in your view?
I wrote in the paper today that I actually believe this is a mental health election. And I'm not saying that lightly. I think that whether it's those angry protests around Trudeau, or whether it's just the tone of the whole debate, the constant threat of a fourth wave of COVID, that I actually believe that this election, like the pandemic, has exposed sort of the fragile emotional state of the nation. I think that it's, I think this is a rough election, and I think it's, I've never seen one in which the question of whether we're having an election, why we're having an election, has lingered so long. I think that goes to the fact that people are feeling very frustrated. So all the issues sort of raised here, I think, cluster into one thing. I think we will remember this as a very fragile, precarious, emotional election for the electorate.
I'm going to follow up with you, Susan, because one thing I certainly remember is the column you wrote on the 31st of August after the protests that took place, protests if we want to call them that, in Bolton and Cambridge in Ontario. And here's what you wrote in that column. You said, "This crowd, in short, looks ungovernable. Questions of how to treat the people in it during an election don't seem half as important as what to do with them when the voting is all over. They aren't just at the fringe of politics, they're a democratic mutation of free speech." I don't know how many elections you've covered, Susan. I'm going to guess it's, probably somewhere from 10 to 12. Is it 10?
11.
11, okay. Is this the ugliest you've ever seen it?
Yes. Yeah. I've seen, there have been protests, and I think, there's been an attempt to say, every prime minister has had angry people around them too. What these people are saying, and I think you have to actually see one. I'm glad I saw one in Cambridge. You have to see what these people are saying, and you have to go into the crowds, and it's disturbing. I do worry about what this fringe is going to do if Trudeau does manage to squeak through with a minority. I do worry about what Erin O'Toole would do with them. They're not deferential to the police. They're not deferential to government, and they're very, very angry. It looks very Trump-like, if I may say. And it escalates all the time. For the purposes of this show, it's worth noting, and I was talking to a Quebec colleague this morning about this. They're not. It's an Ontario thing. There's a little bit happening in BC, but not, I'm told, with the magnitude that they are in Ontario. And I think that's a distinguishing factor of the province this campaign too. It may be that this little group is better able to travel in between, and it's many of the same people who are doing the stops, but it is particularly Ontarian, and it's not happening in Quebec.
Well, let's see how far afield from the southern part of the province this goes. Emma, are you seeing the kinds of ugly demonstrations that we've seen in and around the Greater Toronto area in southwestern Ontario?
We haven't seen them here yet, but it's important to note that Justin Trudeau hasn't come to the area since the launching of the campaign. Only Jagmeet Singh has visited Windsor, Essex.
So you haven't seen it. All right, David, how about you? In Northern Ontario, anything the likes of which we've seen in Bolton or in Cambridge?
To some degree. During the last year, we have seen some anti-lockdown protests, some anti-vaccine protests here in North Bay down at our waterfront. A lot of people broke the masking and social distancing rules. There were tickets handed out, but were they as angry and violent as the people we've seen during the campaign? No. So there is a similar sentiment, but the, I guess, level of anger and vitriol wouldn't be the same.
Emma, how about in southwestern Ontario? Any anti-vax protests that have been particularly noteworthy during the campaign?
Not during the campaign, but prior to the campaign, there were a few, but no more than 30 people. So nothing, not a big phenomenon that we're seeing in the GTA.
Interesting. All right, Erin, what's Paulie got to say about the ugliness that we've seen on the hustings so far?
Well, there's no question that the protesters are helping Trudeau's campaign. We are seeing a huge boost for Mr. Trudeau on the issue of protesters. As Susan mentioned, people really see the protesters. They're liking them to the Capitol Hill protesters. They see them as American-style politics. Of course, it's very Canadian, but they also associate them with conservative voters. They see this as this anti-vax group that Erin O'Toole, because he doesn't require mandatory vaccinations even of his own candidates, they see them as part of that brand. And so it's a reminder of what could happen if these people got more more support. And so every time Mr. Trudeau stands up to them, not just sympathy for Mr. Trudeau, but also this idea that he is defending democracy and he's defending Canadians from this, what they see as hooliganism. So they are definitely helping the Liberal cause.
Huh. Susan, let me fact check that with you. When you were at Cambridge and when you saw that demonstration, I mean, Erin O'Toole has taken pains to say there's no place in my campaign for those kinds of people. We don't want them. But is there a connection?
No, there's more of a connection to the People's Party of Canada. There are People's Party signs. Maxime Bernier has been whipping them up on Twitter. I just want to say I feel southwestern Ontario in London, where I spent many years of my life as a student. There was a demonstration last night, and the Liberal leader was pelted with gravel. So it's making its way down that way. And I noticed that Mark Emery, who, when I was at Western a million years ago, was a pot activist based in London. He was goading them on Twitter as well. So it's making its way down the 401 as well, east and west.
And when you said they're throwing stuff at the leader, is it always Justin Trudeau who's on the receiving end of this? None of the other leaders?
I haven't seen these break out to the extent on the other campaigns. There is RCMP security around them for a good reason, all the other leaders. And I think that goes to the fact that it's not that they're anti-liberal, they're anti-government. And they are lashing out at Trudeau because he is the leader. They are confused, though, too. They don't know the difference between measures that Doug Ford has taken. The vaccine passports are Doug Ford's thing, but Trudeau's getting blamed for those. In Cambridge, I heard one yelling that they were furious that they'd received tickets, would have been their municipality. So they're all over the map, literally and ideologically. They don't make a whole lot of sense. I'm not going to repeat some of their wackier things they were saying, but they are dangerous, and they're dangerous for democracy too. I would resist any effort to make light of what these are, or to call them just some sort of scary fringe out there as well. They're organized and they're disturbing.
Well, let me follow up on that. And David, I saw you nod your head when Susan said they're dangerous for democracy. Obviously, there are a lot of people who think that they are participating in democracy by doing this, and that they are a part of democracy by doing this, as opposed to a threat to democracy by doing this. What's your take on that, David?
Yeah, I think it's hard not to see this as an extension of some of the anti-elite sentiment we associate with Trumpism, and it's just being exported here in Ontario and Canada. We do see populism in people like Doug Ford, and he campaigned as an anti-elite, but really once he got into government, he really has listened to the elites, mostly the scientists and doctors here, maybe to some disappointment of these populist elements. So we've had populism in Canada on both the left and the right. This group of people feel as though they're empowered to say whatever they want in the name of democracy, in the name of free speech. But really, with free speech, there comes a certain level of responsibility that, again, these protesters, if we want to call them that, don't seem to understand or grasp. They never really have been educated in that area, I would say. So it is very disturbing, and it does remind me of the insurrection, as it was called, the Capitol protesters, the occupiers in the United States. So do we really want to see that kind of element coming here to Canada? Have we seen that come to Canada? I think to some degree, yes, empowered by American media and social media more broadly.
I should say we're going to do a whole program on this on Monday, or we're going to do a significant part of our program on Monday on this, so I shouldn't overdo it on this part of the campaign tonight, but I still want to hear from Emma on whether or not she thinks that what we're seeing is a threat to democracy. What's your view on that?
Well, it's very unfortunate that these protesters are resorting to intimidation and harassment to have their voices heard, but at the same time, none of the parties are supporting their cause, right? So what these protests have, the outcome of these protests, I think, is to put the attention on two issues, which is mandatory vaccination and vaccination passports, but also on Trudeau's personal leadership. And I think these two issues are going to become the ballot questions for the election.
Erin, I want to circle back with you now, because you did say that the more these protesters are gaining traction and coverage, the better it is for Justin Trudeau. And I wonder if you could give us a little insight into what you're seeing in your data that reflects that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a graph that looks at the issues and signals where people are looking to vote for one party or another based on that issue. And the protesters are number one in people switching their vote to Justin Trudeau. We're also seeing that support for vaccine passports and mandatory vaccination have gone up over the course of the campaign. Now, whether that's because of these protests or just as vaccine passports get implemented, people have come to accept it. These are all associated with the Liberal Party, and so we are seeing that the trend is toward wanting these things, and so I think it bodes well for the Liberals.
And Susan, one last thing on this. In your travels among these protesters, do you ever notice anybody being arrested yet? Because certainly some of the things that I've seen, you would think crossed the line. Some of the signs are incredibly profane. They're screaming at kids who are wearing masks. There's some pretty antisocial. I don't know if it's illegal, but you got to think it snuggles up to the line. How about that?
Yeah, I've been wondering that myself too. The police, I stood next to the police for a good couple of hours in Cambridge during the demonstration, and they were there. I think the sense was that an arrest would have escalated the situation. So they were keeping people behind the private property line, but nobody was making threats. I would imagine after the incident in London last night, where gravel was being thrown, that now we're headed into a territory where that some arrests are going to have to be made.
And do I assume that campaign officials around Justin Trudeau are not permitted to say to the RCMP or the local police, hey, look at that, go arrest them? That's not on, I assume?
No, that would, we don't live in that kind of banana republic yet, where the Prime Minister can order arrests. But I think they're unnerved. The day, again, I was with them, the protesters followed the buses to the airport and came into the airport. They're doing a lot of, and the bus was, trying to do a snaking route advised by the RCMP to, not a car chase exactly, but that's the sort of ridiculous state of things right now.
Okay, let's move on here. And again, I want to start back in southwestern Ontario, Emma, with you, because some of the great political fights in southwestern Ontario tend to be between Liberals and New Democrats, and the Conservatives often have not been big players at all. But when you see the Conservatives in first place in the polls nationally and even in the province of Ontario, as many pollsters have them right now, I'm wondering if you see signs of a reinvigorated Conservative Party that might actually take some seats this time. What do you think?
Well, if you look at the rural ridings in southwestern Ontario, they're leaning conservative, and this is not surprising because historically these ridings have voted blue, and with Erin O'Toole's Conservative Party on the rise in the poll, they are going to continue being blue. But I don't think the Conservatives can make gains in the area. You have the NDP, which is trying to regain 2 seats. It lost in the 2019 election. You have the riding of Windsor Tecumseh that went Liberal, and you have the riding of Essex that went Conservative. So the NDP is campaigning hard, and you also have the Liberals who are trying to do inroads in the area. They are running former provincial cabinet minister Sandra Pupatello in Windsor West, and they've injected $100 millions of dollars in the area.
All right, David, how about in Northern Ontario? Do you see any kind of renaissance for the Conservative Party, which, they have won seats up there, they're capable of winning seats up there, but it doesn't happen often?
Yeah, we have about 10 ridings that we count as Northern Ontario ridings. And I think the Conservatives could pick up at least a couple of new ridings. The NDP may also make some gains. So right now we have 6 Liberals, 2 NDP, and 2 Conservatives, and that could change. We could see a more even kind of Northern Ontario as far as those 3 parties go. For example, the Nickel Belt, I think, is one of the most interesting ones here in Sudbury, and that could be an NDP pickup. That's quite possible. Sudbury riding itself could be also an NDP pickup, but I'm going to guess that the Liberal is going to eke it out there. The Conservatives have a good chance in the Sioux, though. I think that they might in fact gain a seat there, and possibly in Thunder Bay, Rainy River. Kenora, they already have that seat. The NDP are running fairly strong there, but in all likelihood, the Conservatives will hang on.
Now, let me follow up with you on that, David, because you've mentioned a few seats there that the Conservatives hold provincially. The Sioux, Kenora, the seat you're in, Nipissing right now. The Conservatives have all those seats provincially. We know that from time to time, people like to hedge their bets in Ontario. They put one party in power provincially and a different one federally. Do you see evidence of that this time?
It's really so many toss-ups, Steve. I mean, it's very hard to know if that's going to happen. I mean, you're right. We sort of vote one way provincially and then another way federally. Here in my riding, federally, we have, of course, Anthony Rota, who was Speaker of the House, who maybe again, we'll see. And Conservatives have run strong in this riding previously. We've seen the NDP actually trend up. So it's hard for me to kind of agree with you just on the face of it, just because there are, of the 10 ridings, 5 of them are close or even toss-ups. So I'm not so sure.
Gotcha. Erin, I want to just go through with you relatively quickly, if we can, a series of issues that have been hot, and I want to know if they still are. For example, on the day that Justin Trudeau called the election, Afghanistan blasted into the headlines. Is Afghanistan still, a few weeks later, as strong an issue affecting people's voting decisions?
No, it's come very far down. It's still there, but it's come down quite a bit.
All right. How about the issue of mandatory vaccinations? Is that the cleavage among different parts of the electorate that the Liberals would like it to be?
Yes, it is. And vaccine passports more than mandatory vaccines, but both of them are going up, especially vaccine passports, obviously, because provinces are implementing them. But that also has an effect on mandatory passports. That is going up as an issue. And it favors, well, it tends to be more of a partisan issue, though. So if you believe in them, you lean toward one party. So I don't see it as a swing issue, or Polly doesn't see it as a swing issue, but it's definitely increasing, and it's tied to the protesters as well.
All right. Is there a sleeper issue out there that perhaps we are not aware of that's having more impact than perhaps we realize?
Yeah, we've done a ranking of issues that are important among swing voters. And I think the swing voters, as we heard, there's a large pool of them, and they're very important. And these issues in there that we've not heard at all in this campaign are things like immigration, racism, climate change, of course, and abortion tops that list. So these are issues that swing voters are considering. And I think that the debate coming up this week is going to be really, really important in deciding how some of these swing voters go.
I'm going to get to the debates in a second, but I want to hit on a couple of more issues here. When the Liberals talk childcare, of course, they've been signing these agreements with provinces over the last many months. And Erin O'Toole, the Conservative leader, even though asked many times, has yet to commit as to whether or not he'll leave those agreements in place or do something else. What is Polly saying about those splits on the issue of childcare?
Daycare is really, really important in this election, and people don't understand or don't like Erin O'Toole's tax breaks for daycare. People really want to see the $10 a day daycare, as people are talking about, so it really, really favors the Liberals. All
right, last one, guns. We've seen, again, the Liberals try to create a kind of a wedge with the Conservatives on the issue of assault rifles, AR-15s, guns over the last few days. How's that resonating?
Discussion about this issue is definitely going up, but we're seeing it falling along partisan lines. So if you are a Conservative, you think it's okay what the Conservatives are proposing. If you're a Liberal and you were never going to vote Conservative anyway, you're very incensed by this issue. So far, we haven't seen it cross party lines, but we'll see after the debate if it manages to swing those swing voters.
Okay, going to pick up on the debate now, and Susan, that takes me to you. Tomorrow, and is it tomorrow and Thursday, the two leaders' debates? If I got that right? Yeah, tomorrow and Thursday, the two leaders' debates, French and English. And, I presume this is really the last opportunity that all the party leaders have who are participating. Maxime Bernier is not, but who are participating in this debate to reset the narrative. So set the stakes for us, if you would.
They're massive for especially Erin O'Toole and for Justin Trudeau. I would say that Jagmeet Singh has had a very good campaign. He's probably going to be as likable in the debates as he has been on the ground. I would say that it is, I would imagine there are white knuckles in the back rooms of the Conservatives and the Liberals for these debates. Justin Trudeau has to rescue or pull this campaign back from the brink of losing power. And Erin O'Toole has to persuade Canadians that he is the progressive, reasonable guy who has managed to attract a significant amount of support and momentum in this campaign. These debates could actually change momentum for both of them, and both of them, I think, would be worried.
Emma, what will you be looking for at the two debates?
Well, for Justin Trudeau, he will need to give the performance of his life during the French and the English debates this week. He is right now, I would say, in panic mode. He was supposed to campaign on a recovery plan, and now he's been focusing on these wedge issues like abortions, gun control, vaccination mandates, etc. So he needs to appear in control of the situation. He needs to sell what he's done over the last 6 years.
And David, maybe I can get you to follow up just by focusing on, let's say, the smallest party that's participating in this debate. Annamie Paul's had a really tough time. Her party has been on fire, and I don't mean that in a good way, with internecine rivalries and so on. I mean, this is her last chance to make her case to the Canadian people, I presume.
Yeah, you have to feel bad for her in a way. She kind of came into a party that was falling apart all around her. They're not even going to be able to run 338 candidates. I don't know the number they actually settled on, but it's well short of a full slate of candidates. So they're already sort of conceding that, as well as they did last time around, winning 3 seats, it seems as though they may be lucky to win 1. And any hope of growth seems quite distant. Will this help the NDP? That's kind of what we would normally say. But, the Green voter is kind of a strange beast. It may go any number of directions. And so I'm not sure if the NDP will necessarily benefit from this Green collapse. Does she have to give the performance of her life, as Emma has said about Justin Trudeau? Well, absolutely. And in essence, she'll have to introduce herself to Canadians. Most Canadians really don't know anything about her, haven't seen her speak. So I guess she has a chance to save a complete collapse of her party this time around by a good debate performance.
In our last minute here, and Erin, I'm going to save it for you because you've been on this program before many of the last elections, and we always remind people, pollsters tell people what people thought yesterday. They don't necessarily predict what's going to happen 2 weeks from now. But Paulie does this. Paulie does predict on the basis of all of the data that she chews on where she thinks it's ultimately going. At what point will you give us Paulie's call?
Oh, my goodness. I'm hoping 3 days before the election. I'll have a better idea after the debate. The debate is essential. I don't think there's been a debate that's been more important. For this one, what we're seeing is even though the Conservatives are ahead, even in Paulie's seat count, the issues that are important to Canadians and are increasingly important favor the Liberals. So that's why it's really difficult to call it this time. We have a lot of swing voters. So ask me next week. But right now, I'd say it's anybody's election. Between those two parties, it's very close.
Well, if I recall, you came on a few days before the last federal election wearing red, and that was my first clue that I knew who you were going to predict. Have you got, the red wardrobe, the blue wardrobe, I don't know, maybe the orange wardrobe standing by?
I've got both standing by. It's
Gotcha.
Too early to call it this point.
All right. We will call on you when necessary then. My thanks to Erin Kelly, Susan Delacourt, David Tabachnik, Emmanuelle Richez for coming on to TVO tonight. Thanks so much for starting our 16th season in such style, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.